Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
So many submissions into the Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox. We'll get to them in a bit here. In the meantime, all of our guests today are brought to you by our title sponsor, Able Auctions, ableauctions.ca. Shade makes a good point. Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox. Miller had a great game head-to-head against Crosby.
That's right.
Who was also very good. Penguins over the Canucks 4-3 in overtime as we bring in from TSN, Farhan Lalji. Thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
Thanks for having me again.
You got a Bill Belichick look going with a hoodie today. What's going on there?
Well, I mean, you like that? Bill normally has the half sleeve hoodie torn up. Well, nothing. Yeah, I just bought this. I was just in Vegas at a football tournament with Luke, and I liked it. Have you ever had this episode with your kids, Donnie, where you go and you show them something, and you're like, what do you think of this? And they look at and say, "For you?"
Yeah.
Have you ever had that?
Pretty much every day, Farhan.
Pretty much. Be cool once.
Yeah.
At some point.
I don't think
I like
was.
it. I used to wear vests a lot when I coached. And I'm not coaching as much now, but I kind of like the look of this. And, I think actually our good friend Mike Benavides, who used to wear the Bill Belichick, like the cut-up hoodie, he's not gone to one of these because he's living in the gym now. So he wants to show the gun show. I don't have that.
Rick has a story about that. About Mike Benavides.
Oh, yeah.
You're impressed by his biceps.
Oh, yeah. I saw him at a Subway in a tank top.
Yeah, see, I don't pull that stuff
He's got huge pipes. Like, I'm telling you, this guy's built like a machine.
Yeah, hey, what do you say? Some of us grays age gracefully, and then there's us.
That's Benavides. Benavides, boy, he lifts weights. I can tell you that much right now.
Right. We'll move on from that. Penguins over the Canucks 4-3 in overtime. Canucks have lost 5 of 6. They're 5-5-2, 12 games since the All-Star break. What are you seeing, Farhan?
Well, you're seeing kind of different things on a nightly basis, right? And last night it was turnovers. And I think, we've been able to marvel at what Rick Tocchet's been able to accomplish this team in terms of its defensive structure, its awareness, its habits, and just not being a careless team. And we saw that last night from a number of Canucks. You saw Pittsburgh try to be a little more aggressive with their forecheck. We saw 2 men in on a regular basis once the game got 2-0 for Vancouver, and they didn't react really well. They weren't as connected. Even the forwards coming down to support would turn the puck over. So I don't know that that's a trend, and I know people want to react. I certainly reacted to the Seattle game and just to how bad it was all the way around, and I know the schedule played into that. But I don't know. I think for most of these games, they're doing some things in 5-on-5 which are really positive. Hopefully the turnovers for them don't become a trend. But I don't look at the totality of it and panic, because I do think they weren't going to play 700 hockey the entire season. So, now they're still in a good position, and they're still playing above 500 hockey since the All-Star break. And I expect they'll be a little bit above that going forward over the final 20 games.
Yeah, Rick made the point that a lot of the other teams at the top of the standings are faltering as well. Yeah. They're still number one overall. Hey, what do you believe? When we talked about this earlier in the week, got a lot of reaction to it. But what do you believe when it comes to Elias Pettersson and his future in Vancouver?
I think there's reasons to question it. And look, not a lot has changed. I know the Friedman report last week certainly raised a lot of eyebrows. And it might just be as simple as other teams doing due diligence, and it might be more, right? Like, we're not exactly sure, but I do think that there's, I think there's reasons to question the desire of Pettersson for wanting to be here long term. I truly do, because we all know that finances aren't an issue here, right? Ownership is fully committed to signing this player. We know there were numbers talked about before the year which are absolutely top of market. So this isn't a money thing, right? This is Pettersson wanting to make judgment on what the Canucks are and whether or not he wants to be a part of it, and what this market is and whether or not he wants to be a part of it. And what the team is showing is they're absolutely trending in the right direction. If you're Pettersson going into this and you're like, I want to see a winner, you couldn't have asked for more, at least as far as the regular season is concerned at this point. So, okay, maybe that's something he'll consider in the offseason. There are people who have suggested that there's the fishbowl effect of the market, and maybe he wants to go someplace where he can be a little more anonymous. I don't know that that's the case, but look, this isn't about money. right? So it's not about I don't want to negotiate in season, because guess what? There probably isn't much to negotiate because the club's willing to pay top of market dollar. So do I think he's going to get traded at the deadline? Absolutely no shot. This team is all in. There is no chance they trade him before March 8th or on March 8th. Now, at the draft or before free agency, I think it's very possible that happens. I think it's also possible he signs a short-term extension. Do I think he signs a long-term extension? I doubt it, and I don't know that beyond just opinion. But this isn't one of those situations where he has said, I want to be in Vancouver. Just leave me alone and we'll negotiate later. Mm-hmm. I love it in Vancouver. Leave me alone and we'll negotiate later. There's none of that, right? He's got a decision to make. He'll make it in the offseason. But the fact that this is not about finances, and here's the other thing. I don't believe this is agent advice, because we see this in certain situations where an agent says, hang on, your value's only going to go up. I don't believe that's what's happened here. I think this is purely about the player. So, we'll see. But he'll be here in March and into the playoffs, no doubt.
Yeah, it is driven by the player, not the agents. That is for sure. The Pettersson isn't the only decision they got. The trade deadline is about 8-9 days away. They're in on Gensel, they're in on Tanev, they're in on smaller stuff. I don't know how they're going to do a big deal because it's going to cost more first-round picks. I'm looking at the prospect pool, and it's not super-duper great. But anyways, what do you want them to add here at the deadline?
I'd like to see them add some forward depth at the bottom of their lineup. Look, we know what they need, and I'm on the same page as you, Rick. I don't know how they swing big, right? I don't know how they go big game hunting. They did that with Lindholm, and you've got to give them credit for that, and they got it done early. And maybe it hasn't worked out to this point, but I haven't thrown the baby out with the bathwater on Elias Lindholm. I still think this is a quality player who, by the end of the season, is going to pay dividends for this team. But I don't know how you get Gensel. I don't know how you get Tanev, because you've already given up first-round draft picks, and you don't have a lot to give up. And do you really want to go all into that degree for this season where you completely sacrifice the future? I'd be concerned. They made some big sacrifices around Lindholm, and I don't know that they should do more. But, could they improve the bottom of their lineup? They could, even though the fourth line outside of the Bluger turnover yesterday played great. I do think it's an area where people have been concerned about. It'll get better when Dakota Joshua gets back, but this club can't be that paper thin where they can't get by without Dakota Joshua, right? I mean, someone else is going to get hurt down the road here because it just happens. So yeah, I think they're going to nibble around the edges. I just don't know how they can go big game hunting.
You should throw that hoodie out with the bathwater.
Yeah, that's right.
NFL Combine. Oh, and you know what? I couldn't pull it off. So what do I know? NFL Combine underway. Before we let you go, in Indy.
Yeah.
How much stock do you put into that, Farhan? How much stock do teams put into that?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they put a fair bit into it. I don't think it's going to decide whether a player gets drafted or not, but it could move you up around. Right? I mean, if teams have concerns about your speed and all of a sudden you run in the 4.3s at the combine, if you're a skill position player, that's gonna answer a lot of questions, right? But what's happened now at the combine also is you get a certain amount of these guys that don't want to throw, or they don't want to test, and they want to wait, and they want to pick and choose agents' advice on what they're going to do at the combine, and then do the rest of it at their own pro days in a more comfortable setting. So, it's not just the combine. You kind of have to wait into some of those events as well later on in March before you pass complete judgment. But does testing matter to teams? Probably more than it should, right? I mean, and a lot of times guys, wait for the testing and then they go full circle back and focus on the film. And I think certainly in the case of a position like quarterback, you should absolutely be focusing a heck of a lot more on the film than anything you see this week in Indianapolis. But for other skill positions, it's an absolute opportunity to shine and elevate your stock.
And one more before we let you go. Former BC Lion Craig Rowe has passed away, Farhan, at age 33 of colon cancer. How well did you know him?
Yeah, I got to know him pretty well because he let me know early on in his time in BC that he really wanted to coach when it was over for him. And he knew that I had coached. And, I always appreciate guys that want to give back to the game. And even before he retired, he started doing videos and getting involved with books on defensive line play. Like, he was a real technician, and, he wasn't necessarily the best or most obvious athlete, but he played with just a ton of passion and drive and, relentlessness. And so if you saw some of his posts, and he and I communicated from time to time on coaching, I just thought this was a guy that was an infectious personality, someone you wanted to be around. We see defensive backs do the big seatbelt thing. Remember, Rowe got in trouble for sheathing his sword after a sack, right?
Yeah.
And we had some laughs about that. But just a good guy. My condolences to his family, and just a loss to the overall football community.
Thanks for this, Farhan. Well said. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, take care, boys.